Question 1. We're going to look at Africa, how it was represented during the colonial conquest in social political terms. Africa, a negative and indispensable term, a negative trope in the language of modernity. Africa during the colonial conquest was represented as being primitive and unintelligent like an animal. As stated by Neverdeen, the continent is represented as a seductive, destructive woman while the Europeans are combating evil. They thought Africa was uncivilized and in a great need of colonization from the more advanced, civilized and moral Westerners. Africa became associated with metaphors of darkness, blackness, ignorance, dirt and danger, and you can associate all these words with evil. The above statement refers to just how Africa was seen during the colonial conquest and how Westerners viewed it and its people, darkness, not only in the colour but as a whole and in the need of enlightenment.
And in the morning as they saddled up to ride, their eyes
Bringing you to the end of the movie, we see Dr. Gallagher as a white European who has been beaten by the savage African people, who form part of a high elite political army. How does this represent Africa? Well, as we will be mentioned later, the President mentions that the British placed them where they are now. They might be clothed like the British, but the candy-coated scene shows us what Africa and their brutal actions are capable of. The scene then cuts to what people don't see about Africa, where the African children are running with smiles on their faces waving at the President's car. The scene shows the African nation and country as being ignorant and childlike to what type of person the President is and what he is doing to his country. Africa was a site of great underdevelopment that needed redemption from Europe. So we can say that African women in the eyes of the Europeans are used as sex objects. We can take it further to say that the female African represents Africa as being penetrable, and once penetrated, she who represents Africa is inhibited by the European, and therefore she or Africa has created a myth or representation of what Africa is all about. Africa was also said to have sexual deviance. This notion of sexual deviance is portrayed in the film as we see Dr. Gallagher have sex with the President's wife. We also see women given to Dr. Gallagher as sex objects, and women dancing naked around the fire. As Neverdeen stated in the profile of the African primitive or savage in his impenetrable jungle, in his nudity and with his wild dancing form part of the European metaphor for uninhibited sexuality. If we look at this quote, we can relate to the word impenetrable. We can associate that as the independence of Uganda. But laying the word jungle next to it, impenetrable jungle, it gives a whole new meaning, such as a land that can't be taken over because of the animal or Africans that inhabit that place. And because the Africans strongly believe in their culture, their dance and their nudity, it leads the Europeans to believe that Africans are free to practice any kind of sexual practice or favour that they like.
What is stereotyping? We will be briefly discussing the histories of stereotyping in relation to Africa. Stereotypes refer to characteristics put onto a specific group of people that are not true. As said in the presentation, stereotypes are a standardized conception or image of a specific group of people. They forced a simple pattern onto a complex group of people, applying limited characteristics to all members in the group. Stereotypes characteristics tell us that they are normally very far from the truth and not normally experienced firsthand, but rather told to people by mediators. European philosophers held the Europeans were more fully involved, more civilized than other races. Hence, other races need civilizing. This was not the case, but rather generalization about Africa as a whole. The Europeans thought they had complete knowledge about Africa and its people, although this knowledge was gained from stereotypes of Africa. Africa was seen as a dark continent by the European during the post-colonial conquest. Inside scientific discourse and in the imagination of Victorian Europe, the black or the blackness served as a symbol for the suppressed libido. The reason this is seen as a stereotype is because Africa was given an image by the Europeans as a dark continent because of the practice of the culture and sexual connotation. What is blackface? Blackface is theatrical makeup that was used in the ministry shows that promoted racism and stereotyped views of Africa, black people in the 19th century. The audience for these shows were largely working class white men. If I refer you to the image, we can see how the African individual has been portrayed as an ape, animal-like, and used as a comic theatre production for the white man. This also relates to the way they practice their culture, how they use makeup for traditional purposes, and the way they act and dance. The white man has taken their culture to theatre as a mockery of how people see Africa.
As discussed in the presentation with regards to phonology, it is said that phonology was the science of characterizing non-Western as biologically, physically, and intellectually different, thus justifying trade of native people as slaves. This stereotype was made up so that it seemed okay to trade native people as slaves because they were really more like animals than humans. The people are characterized from dog to ape to African, and then further steps onto normal Europeans by measurements of the head. As stated, the stereotype portrays non-whites as dangerous and animal-like. Question 3. How is such a view propagated or negated in the film? In the film The Last King of Scotland, the stereotypes of how Africa and its people are showed through various filmic devices such as wardrobe, language, etc. The movie shows us the stereotypical view of how black people are poor and uncivilized. We see them in dirty clothes that are torn and old, while the whites wear clean, pure white clothes. The clothes that Amin wears are like a general's for the army, showing his stereotypical brutality and his power over the people of Uganda. The doctor that 80% of the locals still prefer the witch doctor to the real doctors. The gestures, facial expressions and tones in their voices tell us, the viewer, that because they prefer the witch doctors to the European doctors, the Africans are ignorant and uneducated. In the scene, we can see Dr. Gallagher looking at the witch doctor, which we can see is a witch doctor from certain codes established about Sangomas, such as his dress and movements. These wild movements and actions confirm that the locals are ignorant. During the movie, Dr. Gallagher states with regards to Amin's ruling style that he is unpredictable but has a firm hand, the only way Africa understands. This is a stereotype that Dr. Gallagher is stating, as it is not truthful, but rather assumed and made up. He tries to cover up for Amin's brutality by saying that it is the only way Africa knows. Dr. Gallagher also states, "This is Africa. You meet violence with violence, else you're dead."
Disappearing. stone fucked them. People amaze me. You know, the first sign of an independent African leader actually achieving something. What do? You spit your dummy because you can't stand the idea that he's done it without you. I know he's maybe a little bit rough, but what do you expect? You think if both these people are sitting around waiting for clarifications? Look at me. This is Africa. You meet violence with violence. Anything else, you're dead.
This is quite an ironic and stereotypical statement, as violence is the cause of all the deaths that occur in Uganda during the movie. It is also stereotypical of Westerners' views on how African people are.
Nimbone kubi moti mali ya
Nimbonanje
Nimbone shijamaso imali ya
Nimbonanje
Nimbone muhle kanjeli mali ya Eshaya ma long distance imali ya Ehambe khulume singisi imali ya
Nimbonanje
Nimbone shinja maso imali ya
Oh nimbonanje
Nimbone takwa njali imali ya Maju setha no sigiliti